Good morning, everybody. This is the Economic Development Committee meeting for the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris Rulin, our chair, to introduce our guests and start the program.
Sure. Good morning. We are going to have a presentation on from WMATA representatives about some of the projects they have going on in the region, specifically for their project along Georgia Avenue. And I think it's most appropriate to hand it back to Judith Howerton.
I think I'll just let Aniquenze go. He's ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Before you get started, excuse me, if everybody who is not speaking would please mute yourselves. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Aniquenze Ogwe, and I'm a project manager in the Bus Priority Group at Metro. And I'll be giving you a quick briefing about our tactical bus lanes demonstration project this morning. So we're going to go through the goals and objectives, project details, schedule, and next steps for the project. So you may be asking, why is Metro conducting this bus lane demonstration project? So our goals are a few in number. First, we want to design a 1 mile two-way tactical bus lane and up to and queue jumps on a high ridership corridor in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. During the demonstration, we will evaluate bus service reliability and traffic operations before determining whether the installation should be made permanent. This project also helps to build a stronger relationship with WMATA and Maryland jurisdictions in providing frequent and reliable regional transit connections. The project also helps us accelerate implementation of bus rapid transit corridors in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. Oops. Since the summer of 2021, we have developed a great rapport with our partners from Montgomery County DOT, Prince George's DPW&T, MDOT-SHA, and MTA. Our initial work involved looking at both counties to identify congested corridors where our buses would benefit from bus lanes. So why tactical bus lanes instead of just regular bus lanes? So tactical bus lanes are quick build bus lanes that only use red paint and signs. Since it takes less time to implement them, bus riders can see benefits faster. After installation, demonstration projects can also be modified and improved pretty easily. And another reason we're doing this is also supports Montgomery County's climate action plan, which includes many initiatives to increase transit and improve transit reliability. And below, you can see two examples of bus lanes in Montgomery County. On the left, you'll see the bus lanes in Century Boulevard in Germantown, and the bus lanes on Wayne Avenue in Silver Spring. So some of the longer corridors, bus lane corridors, get caught up in political issues and NIMBYism that often delay environmental reviews, planning, and implementation. Conversely, quick build projects allow us to show the benefits of a project through the demonstration period. So I want to emphasize that because it's a demonstration, it's an ongoing process of getting engagement and figuring out how to make the bus lanes more effective once they're installed. Oftentimes in other projects, we don't get an opportunity to do that, and we have longer periods of implementation time and planning. And Metro already has a strong partnership with DC to get bus lanes implemented. So we want to develop similar relationships with our partners in Maryland, so our buses can move through congested corridors and address our high frequency bus routes to get customers who live in Maryland to their destinations faster. So on the map, you can see in red, those are locations where the district has implemented bus lanes in the past few years, and the blue lines are areas where they're looking to expand in the future. And this slide just shows on the left and right some of the BRT plans in Prince George's and Montgomery counties respectively. Our goal is to make sure that we can learn from the process that we're conducting now and apply some of those lessons learned to other projects, and just see that all these corridors get implemented quicker. So here's a map of the project limits for the tactical bus lane corridor on George Avenue. You can see from 16th Street is where it starts and it ends on the south end or at Wayne Avenue. And this is a really key corridor that we found that addressed and supplemented a lot of the efforts that Montgomery County is pursuing elsewhere in the county for bus lanes and bus priority. On the right side of the screen, you can see the typical section of what exists there today in terms of the lanes and the configuration. And you can see what the proposed configuration will look like once the bus lanes are installed. So why Georgia Avenue? Why did we pick this corridor versus some others? Below you see the transit and vehicle data, and it really demonstrates that this is a high ridership corridor with a lot of multifamily residential, employment, retail, and entertainment destinations to downtown Silver Spring. And it's also a really important regional connection to the Metro Rail Red Line, Ride-On, Flash, and Mark Brunswick Line at Silver Spring Transit Center. Another reason why we selected George Avenue is that it helps us meet our equity goals in terms of providing high quality service to our customers who need it the most. So bus ridership along the corridor is predominantly low income and people of color, as you can see here. And on this corridor, we're looking at two options for bus lanes to operate on weekdays. The first option will look at peak period bus lanes in both directions on the southbound and northbound. So you can see here, the bus lanes would operate from 6:30 to 9:30 in the morning in the rush hour period, and then from 3:30 to 7 p.m. in the afternoon rush hour period. And these lanes would operate in both directions, so north and south. The difference with option 2 is that this would be peak period bus lanes only in the peak direction. So we know that travel in the rush hour in the morning runs essentially southbound. So that's when that option would have the bus lane operating only in the southbound. And then people would be allowed to park in the opposite direction, northbound. And then in the evening rush hour period, it would be the opposite. So northbound, the bus lanes would operate only. And then southbound, people would be allowed to park in the southbound curbside lanes. So when we compare those two options, we do see that the hours, just the hours of operation, are greater on option 1 versus option 2. And the parking and loading restrictions are a little different, but not too different from the current configuration now. So in option 1, because you are not able to park in the northbound direction in the AM, those previously allowed parking spaces would not be allowed to park from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And then in the PM, it's also affected several spaces in the southbound direction, and those previously permitted parking spaces would not be allowed. Now, during the off-peak period from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., there are no changes to the current parking and loading restrictions on option 1 and on option 2. So people are still allowed to conduct loading and parking needs that they normally do now. And I just want to speak to the benefits to bus riders when you compare both options. Option 1 improves bus reliability in both directions during the AM and PM peak, and that provides the fuller benefit to our bus riders. In contrast, option 2 only provides improved bus reliability in one direction. So that doesn't provide as much benefit to the bus riders who use this corridor. And that's something that we're going to have to weigh when we look at both options. So the project schedule, in the period where we are now, around October, November, we're in the design phase, and we will be conducting public information sessions in the beginning of next month in November. And we plan to finish the design and look to start construction in summer 2023, so next year. And then in the fall, we expect the bus lanes to open, and we'll be doing a performance evaluation in the following year in 2024 to see how well the bus lanes are working and what adjustments we might need to make, and also determine whether they should be permanent. So the performance evaluation is going to look at reliability, speed, and traffic before and after the installation. And the 2 points of two factors that we're looking at on for the first one for reliability, we just want to understand, like, are the speeds for the slowest buses improving? And that is a key indicator of reliability, because if your worst performing buses or slowest buses are improving in terms of their speed, then that means overall most of the buses on the corridor are also improving, and that helps our riders know that buses are arriving on time when they say they are on the schedule. We're also going to look at increased median speeds, and that helps us determine that, you know, because our buses are moving a little bit faster, it reduces the overall travel time for our bus riders. And then we're also going to look at traffic analysis. We're doing a traffic analysis right now, and we're applying certain mitigations to, you know, affect some of the disruptions that may be caused at certain intersections. And this also provides us with a baseline for evaluating that in the future. And now I'll pass it over to Judith, and she'll give a quick rundown of the public engagement efforts on the project.
Okay, so we're planning to have 3 touch points of public engagement with these projects. The first round is, now that the design is complete, we will have that. And then the next round will be prior to construction. And then the last round will be post implementation, so at evaluation stage. With this first round, the first meeting is going to be held on November 1st for this particular project. It's going to run from 6:30 to 8. It's a virtual meeting. You will receive invites along with the public. We will also send it to the committees that we have met with in case people want to attend as members of the public. And the other meeting for Prince George's County is also on November 3rd. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to point out the meetings that we have had. So we met with the Transportation Management District last week. We're meeting with you today. We're hoping to hear from the Urban District Advisory Committee. They have a meeting later this week. And then I don't think we'll be able to meet with the Pedestrian Buses Traffic Safety Advisory Committee because they don't have a meeting this month. But again, like I said, they will be invited to the public information session. So we will be sending out invites to all. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. And a few last points before I close. I did want to note that this project is being funded for construction with our partners at Montgomery County DOT, and we're extremely thankful for that and praise their engagement throughout this entire process. They've been with us the entire way. Another aspect I just wanted to highlight before I close is with respect to parking, we've done a lot of engagement with our partners in Montgomery County DOT, and we understand that there have to be very specific mitigations to continue to allow parking in a way that is helpful to businesses on the corridor. And we're going to continue to have discussions and more engagement so that we can find solutions that work for everyone. And with that, I will open the floor to questions.
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things if you don't mind.
Sure.
We've been approached by Metro to look at these tactical bus lanes where we're enthusiastic. We have put one in Germantown at the transit center. We are looking at 2 or 3 other locations working with Metro and State Highway Administration. So we're very encouraged that we can hopefully move forward with some of these critical projects. The advantage of this project is that it's tactical, as you heard earlier. It does not involve physical concrete road construction. The curbs remain the same. And it just involves looking at traffic signal operations to make sure that everything works and can be, any traffic congestion can be mitigated appropriately, but using traffic signal timing related mitigation, and red paint and signs. It's really important to have the proper signage. It's obviously confusing to have certain hours of the day in operation and others not. But one of the first things we told the team is that parking is really, really critical. And we would like to make sure we have options available for discussion that do not change the parking regulations. And so option 2, the intent of option 2 is to keep things the way they are. So with respect to parking regulations. So as you know, so southbound in the morning towards the Silver Spring Transit Center, there is no parking or loading during that morning peak period. Thank you. And the northbound remains unchanged. And then it's reversed for the evening rush, where northbound parking is restricted and loading is restricted, and southbound remains as is today. So those are the two options. We'd like to get obviously public comment on that. One of the things that we didn't talk about yet, but under either of these options, we're going to have an enforcement program, because what's the sense of putting in an improvement like this if you have a car stopped loading and unloading or parked? Then the bus has to go around and diminishes the benefit of the project. But that's something that we would be working with the businesses and the residents in the corridor and obviously the chamber. So we're definitely interested in comments. We have more outreach, as well as Judith talked about, those more formal sessions, but we're obviously willing and want to talk to businesses and residential buildings along the corridor so that we can answer any questions or any issues they may have. As you know, we have plenty of off-street parking available during those times and the garages that are nearby. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. I think it would be good to open this up for questions, and we may want to go back to being able to see the participants in case anyone would like to ask anything. I might have missed this detail, but one question that was on my mind, and I think that Jane maybe was intending to ask it too, was how do people who are navigating Georgia Avenue know when those lanes are not restricted?
So there will be signage on the roadway indicating when the bus lane is in operation.
Is it like those signs you have on 29 now, where they're sort of overhead and they look like a big X if the lane is closed? I know there's a couple.
Oh, those are not the same type of signs that we would have. Those are more lane. Those are signs to show when people can drive in the lanes, and they're digital. The signs I'm referring to are similar to the signs that you see that say like no parking, or message to people when and where to park. And we're aligning all of that with the existing parking restrictions now. So we'll be looking at how to communicate that, and our design includes where those signs should be positioned. So it'll be positioned where our bus operators can see them, as well as our motorists on the roadway.
Yeah,
Okay,
just to point one thing that we didn't talk about in the presentation is that all the turning movements that are available today would remain available, I believe, in the future. So that if the bus lane going, let's just say southbound, is in effect in the morning, but you want to make a right turn to in any of those streets, you can. The paint lines and the paint system and the signs will say that within so many feet of the intersection, you can be in the right lane and make your turn. So the intent is not to close anything off or anybody off to the fullest extent possible. It gets a little complicated in a couple areas, but I think we have the technical skills on the team to be able to hopefully work out those problems.
Yeah. And our
If I can
website-
interject on that question, that's a question I wanted to ask. Do you have these kind of lanes anywhere else? And has your experience been that it's easier for people to understand when they can park and when they can't park, or when they can turn and when they can't? Because I know we've heard a lot of confusion with all of the bike lane projects in Silver Spring as to when people can get into those lanes to make turns and when they can't and when they can cross them. So it seems like just another, it's going to take a lot of education for people to understand, because we've got a lot of green paint all over Silver Spring. Now we're going to add red paint to that. So what's the education process, and what's been your experience in other places where you have this in place? Or do people just stay out of it because it's red?
So our experiences working with the district is we do public engagement before implementation to educate people on how to use the lanes, whether they're drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, all modes. And we're going to be launching a project website in conjunction with the November public engagement sessions, where people will have an opportunity to look at the design, the concept plans for the design, and see how it works. But we know that that's not enough, so we're continuing to do public engagement sessions with the various committees and stakeholders in their area. And we found that it does take time for people to get used to the bus lanes. And what helps over time is that we'll be able to explain like ahead of the installation. So we're going to have a pre-construction and information session where people will get to see what are the limits and the timings that they are allowed to use the bus lanes. We're doing, like Gary mentioned, we're going to be doing engagement with businesses along the corridor so that they understand and their customers understand what's happening and when they're allowed to use the lanes. And to Gary's point, there are segments of the lanes where drivers will be able to make right turns and with using conflict marking. So it's the part of the lane that is hashed a little bit. There's a red, and then there's a point that's not red, and then another red, and that will allow drivers to, explain to them like, you can use the lane to make a right turn in this section, but you can't use the entire length of the segment to drive in the bus lane.
I would suggest that your education program go way beyond just people in the corridor, because people who come through this don't necessarily come from way up Georgia Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and they're passing through to go all the way to DC. They're not coming to the metro. They're not coming to businesses here necessarily. So that education program is going to have to go far beyond just the people who live and have businesses along the corridor.
Thank you. We will definitely heed that feedback.
Yeah,
ask a question. Oh,
Yeah, one of the things that we are looking at, and which we'll be spending more time on, is what does the paint pattern really look like? There are certain requirements and processes that are approved at the state and federal level. But there are also some examples where maybe the entire width of the lane isn't red, but maybe only a portion of it might be red. And that's for two reasons. One, because of maintenance. If you put paint where the wheels are, you're going to have a maintenance issue on a regular basis, especially with buses. Whereas if you paint in the middle, it might be a little different situation. But those are the sorts of things we will be talking about as the project moves forward, and as well as the options available. The other thing that I would like to mention, since this is being implemented by the county with county operating funds, and it's supposed to be tactical, and we're not changing curbs, mostly paint and signage for the most part, and traffic signal control, timing, changes throughout the year will be possible if we find out we need to modify things. So we have that ability to be able to do that. Anyway, I just wanted to interject that we want to be flexible, but we have goals to try to improve the transit experience without harming the residents, businesses, and users of the road.
Jen, I have
Yeah.
a question, if it's okay. Gary, as you're talking about the red paint and the different patterns, I found that when we started with the bike lanes, there was sort of, I never saw any kind of indication of what the various patterns and things mean on the ground. Is there going to be some kind of key or education for that with these? And along with that, the question of how visible the red paint is going to be at night or in the rain or in the snow, when it's harder to see the lane markings, certainly the coloration of things, so that people who come upon it without a lot of knowledge in those circumstances know what they're looking at, even if they're looking for it.
Those are good questions. I don't have all the answers, but for the bike lanes, for instance, we produced a pamphlet and had a public outreach campaign with the green paint meant. We had t-shirts and we have pamphlets. So that just is a good reminder that we need pamphlets for this that we can distribute, showing the 1 mile section, showing what the paint schemes mean. So that's a very good point. And we'll have to make sure we have something like that in the program that we can also get some comments on from your group and others as well prior to the implementation.
I think if you have a pamphlet, I assume it's available online somewhere too.
Yeah. We will be launching a website for the project where people can go and learn everything that they want to learn about the project and have examples of what the bus lanes mean and what they look like. We'll also have the concept plan. So when I say concept plans, we'll have sheets from 16th Street all the way to Wayne Avenue, showing people in the general vicinity what the bus lanes look like post implementation. So what the red paint will look like, what the signing and marking will look like on the roadway, and that will help acclimate people to this change that's coming. And with respect to your other question about the bus lanes at night, we are using similar pavement markings on the roadway that you currently see now. So when you do drive on this corridor and other corridors, your lights in your vehicle and also the street lights are reflected off of the paint for the travel lanes and the bus lanes. So we're using similar measures so that people can see them and they're highly visible, and you understand that they're there when you drive through.
Got it. Thanks.
I almost wonder if, and maybe this is overkill, but it seems to me that it could be helpful. I almost wonder if it's maybe a good idea to reach out to see if there are any kind of partner ideas with MVA or something like that, so that there's just a way to help create some awareness to the broader public about what this is. Because I do agree with Bill. I think we don't know who the drivers are, and we don't know what their perception is or their background. So anything we can do to create awareness, I think, is probably going to be to the benefit of all.
That's
a great point.
That's a great idea. And we did that for the bike lanes, the green paint. So what I'll do is I'll go back and find online the pamphlets that we used that's still available, and about the green paint and what the solid line means and what the skip line means. They pretty much mean the same thing for the red paint, that when there's a skip line and not solid, you have cars and buses that can mix. And so I think that's trying to be standardized. The red paint is obvious because when you're driving in a lane that's red, that should give the motorists should alert them that maybe they shouldn't be there, and what that might mean.
And just to piggyback,
I'm sorry, I said MVA, but I guess it would be, to Jane's point, maybe whatever agency, the DMV, I guess, in DC, both of them would be helpful probably.
Yeah.
And on this project, I just wanted to let everyone know we are working closely with MDOT SHA. They are the owners of the right-of-way, and they will be attending our public information session. So we will look to send our communications to them in a way that they can also amplify. So it goes out through their communications channels, not just our own at Metro.
There's an excellent point that's been made in the chat that I want to make sure. Cynthia put a comment in there about the signage being critical and helpful because of folks who may be colorblind and can't distinguish, red and green. So it's another consideration to think about.
The U.S. Halal Chamber of Commerce has been trying to ask a question, so let's recognize you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, this is Sophia again. I'm just logged in as the company. Yeah, so I did have a question. So when the project is underway and you mentioned points of like when it's going to be reviewed to see it's successful. How do you really measure if this project is successful, and that will the success replicate other counties or other parts? Like, will this go into Howard County or PG County or something like that?
So some of the performance metrics that we're looking at include reliability, speed, and traffic before and after installation.
Okay.
So reliability just means, are buses showing up on time with respect to the schedule? Are we having fewer delays, fewer buses that are late? And that's like a really important factor for us, because it allows our customers to know that they can trust that this is a bus that's always going to be there when they're expected to be there. And if we see improvements in that respect, then it is a sign of success for us. Another thing we're looking at is speeds. So are buses reducing the amount of time it takes to get through the corridor? Now, this is a 1 mile corridor, and it's not the entire bus route for a lot of these buses, but within this corridor, we want to look at our travel times improving, or is it taking buses less time to get from point A to point B through the corridor? And how does that compare to other parts of routes that don't have bus lanes?
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Gary could speak to some of the other projects in the county.
She did ask one more question. Yes,
Oh,
we're
she
doing
did.
another project in Prince George's County,
Okay.
along with this one. Yes, that's on Silver Hill Road. So yes,
Okay. So they're around the same time that the implementation will happen.
yes, yes.
Okay. And I'm actually glad someone brought up the colorblind issue, because we actually have one person on our team that is colorblind too. And so sometimes you don't actually think about that, but that's a good point that somebody brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for.
I might.
If I can tack on to the question about what does the success mean? You're looking at whether the buses are going faster, whether they're being more on time. Are you looking at whether it's increasing ridership? Because if that's one of the goals, in order to get more cars off the road, you have to increase ridership. So do you look at whether this project serves to increase ridership? And if so, by how much? And then you said you're doing a traffic study. How do you determine how much of an impact it's having on the existing traffic and the existing peak traffic in both directions? Because I mean, people who are coming through here and may or may not be able to use a bus for their commute, or may not be able to use this. If you're slowing down their times drastically, it's going to increase traffic, but just by the number of cars in the 2 lanes that are left over, you're not going to be able to tell, or how do you tell whether people's commutes by car are getting lengthened? Well, if your ridership isn't increasing.
So to the first question on ridership, in demonstration projects, we usually look to evaluate them about 6 months after implementation. That's usually when people start to get used to this new feature on the roadway. However, ridership has a lot of different factors that influence it. And on a 1 mile corridor, it's something that we may not be able to see drastic increases in ridership, because there's so many other factors with respect to people's work habits, or work in remote versus not being remote, and person work schedules. So those are things that we will look at, but ridership isn't going to be like the #1 factor that influences whether we could move forward with installation permanently or not. And then the other question, I can speak to the traffic analysis. We are conducting a traffic analysis on both corridors in Montgomery and Prince George's counties, and we're looking at delay for vehicles and also queuing. So basically our vehicles going into the intersection after a red light, like, is it tough for them to get through after they're stopped through a throughway? Like, is it hard for vehicles to get through the intersection? And we found that there are a couple locations where we should be looking at mitigation, so making some adjustments to traffic signal timing and phasing. And because we're doing that analysis now, it's something that'll help us address issues once they're implemented. So that's an aspect of a preventative approach that'll allow us to mitigate any issues for drivers in that respect. Now, following implementation, we will be doing we'll be looking at traffic operations along the corridor. So we'll look at travel times for vehicles and buses and see like how does that compare from the before phase, maybe a month or two before implementation, and then after it's implemented, we'll be able to compare apples to apples what that travel time looks like for vehicles and our buses. And I do agree with you, like we do want to make sure more people are using the bus because they see this this infrastructure out there. But with respect to ridership, it's harder to see that in a short period of time. It's usually like a longer period of time to see that impact.
I think that's the worry that some of our members have, is that this
Yeah.
demonstration project will be there, but it will be like some of the other projects that we're seeing in Montgomery County that don't seem to have any more ridership, but they're impacting traffic in ways that people don't like. So that's why I think that the question that we got had to do with ridership. Is if the goal is to get people off the road and onto the buses, then if it's not getting people on the buses, then there's something wrong, and we need to take another look at why that's not happening.
Understood.
There is another good comment from Cynthia in the chat, just to pass it on. It's not something that I would have thought of. Whether there could be an opportunity, a signage opportunity on the backs of the buses to help inform people about when they shouldn't be following them in those lanes. And I know that there's a lot of digital signage now on buses that I've seen, but that may be something that could be really helpful as well.
That's a great.
Don't follow me. You shouldn't be following me in this period or something like that.
That's a terrific idea. We use the tail end of ride-on buses. It's a very effective advertising, and I don't know how we certainly can coordinate a proper signage on the Metro buses. I wanted to also say that if you follow what State Highway is doing in the Consolidated Transportation Program, we got a project added, which was fabulous from our perspective. Hopefully you would feel the same. The Finally Montgomery Hills project, which starts at 16th Street, and that's another reason why this ends there, going up to Forest Glen, is now for construction in the Consolidated Transportation Program. So this would then blend in with that. So as this project is designed, hopefully we'll be able to work with the design of that segment, so that we would really then be looking at something from the Silver Spring Transit Center, at least up to Forest Glen, so that hopefully improvements could continue. They're not talking bus lanes like we are here right now for that project, I believe, but it should be an improvement in traffic flow.
Chris,
Okay.
if none of our participants have questions right now, I did get questions from folks who couldn't attend. So if I could ask those now, would that be okay? Or does someone else on the group have a question first? I want to get everybody who's participating answered their question.
Yes. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
I do have a question regarding mitigation again. One of your concerns that you had actually communicated to me that hasn't come up yet is because traffic is double parking. It's a lot of double parking in the area. Letting those people know that when they mitigate that issue, because when they come there during those hours between 3:30 and 7 o'clock for food, to pick up their lunch, their dinner, whatever, from those businesses that's right on Wayne and Georgia, how is that going to be mitigated to let these people know that you cannot park here to go in and get your lunch because you're going to be in the way of a bus lane? You had a question about writing tickets, towing cars. Is that going to be part of the mitigation at all?
That's a good point. Enforcement's going to be a critical element. If you remember, a few years ago, we had Safe Track, and we covered the meters on Georgia Avenue because there were stations closing, and we needed to get people, I guess it was to Silver Spring, when there was no Red Line service. And then we actually did tow cars that were parked in the no parking time frame. I don't know if we need to revert to that, but that's certainly an option to keep the lanes clear, because what's the point of doing the project if you have one car periodically blocking and double parking, and you really are not allowing the demonstration to move forward and to have an impact. So enforcement will be an issue, and we'll have to work with you on that to figure out what's the best way of doing that. We did have a really good enforcement for Safe Track, but that's an area that has to be part of the program.
Gary, to that point, and I know where Sharon's talking about and maybe you know about it, just north of Wayne Avenue along Georgia Avenue, where a lot of people are stopping at the bank and stopping to pick up food. There's no parking there right now.
Right.
It's a no parking zone, and it's not being enforced. DOT, because it's after DOT's enforcement hours, and DOT only enforces in garages. DOT is not enforcing it, and we do not have enough police right now to put that on the backs of our police. Our police have to be left to do the violent crimes and left to deal with that kind of stuff. So Gary, I would say that if indeed this project is going to work and you're going to talk about enforcement, it's going to have to come from DOT.
And I would agree. I mean, I think enforcement for the Safe Track, we coordinated with the tow trucks and took care of that. With respect to parking enforcement, that's something I have to work with Joe's in our parking division.
Yeah.
He couldn't make this morning's meeting, but he's been brought along, knows what we were doing as well.
Okay, because we've basically been told that nobody's going to enforce that no parking area on Georgia Avenue right there, because we've gotten complaints about it over the years, and we've been told by DOT that, well, we're not enforcing that, and that no parking doesn't necessarily sometimes mean no parking, because it's okay to park for 15 minutes to pick something up, which kind of doesn't make sense if it's no parking zone. So people are used to feeling like it's okay to park here if I'm just going to the bank for a minute, or it's okay to park here if I'm just getting my dinner. So that's going to be another big education program, right? Particularly in that area.
I agree with you, and we'll have to work with you and with parking enforcement and signage to make sure that if it's not clear that the signage is in the regulation is that it should be.
Okay, well, the signage is there now, but nobody's enforcing it.
Okay.
So it's there. It says no parking anytime.
I'll talk to both our traffic and parking people and see if we can get back to you with what we think would be a good plan for that stretch.
Okay. Okay.
There's another. Oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Just have one quick one, and I apologize if you said it and I missed it, but what is the methodology by which you decide whether to implement option 1 or 2?
I guess it's the comments from organizations like yours and individual property owners. It's perhaps, I mean, I would say that since this is tactical and it's supposedly, the only difference would be signage for practical purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I may be wrong on this, and Aquenza, but it's only a question of how we sign it. And so if we try one option and we feel it's not working effectively, it's creating problems, we can think about, how flexible we can be and look at making some hopefully minor changes. But I think the decision would probably have to be a coordinated one between the county, state highway, and Metro.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I would express, based on the comments that I got with people who could not come to this meeting, with whom I shared the flyer that WMATA sent out, that option 2 is much preferred to option 1. People were asking me, why in the world would they close parking on a non-peak corridor when people aren't using that system, and they need the parking for the small businesses and for the others along the corridor. We understand, it makes total sense to restrict the parking because it's already restricted. That was the point. was to get traffic through there. And now we're going to try to get it through there faster and get the buses faster. But for what the comments that we heard was that it makes no sense to restrict parking in the opposite direction of a peak rush hour. So I'll put that in for consideration if folks on this call disagree, but that's what I got. That was the response I got from others.
I agree, and I didn't express my opinion because I was going to figure we'd make a group judgment, but I agree with you 100%. Let's do the least impactive, most maintenance of the status quo to the extent we can, while still achieving the purpose we intend.
And my suggestion would be that if you could wait until you can see the actual layout of the block to block layout. Your comments probably won't change on that matter, but it would be good at least to give you more information about what the layout is.
And when will that happen?
I think it's with the November.
On the November 1st public information.
So that'll be different from the flyer that you sent?
Well, you'll get to see a concept plan that shows like a bird's eye view of the roadway and the proposed design. It's more detailed, and we'll go like sheet by sheet, block by block, so people can see.
Will that be something that can, our experience is a lot of people don't come to those kinds of meetings. If people really are interested and are supportive of the project, they come. If they don't know much about it, or they are not bus riders, they won't come. So will that be something that is easily shareable to people, for people who will not show up?
Yes, we will have those documents on our website when it's launched, and it'll be launched before the November public info session on November 1st. And one thing I just wanted to just mention with respect to why we're looking at these two options. Option 1 does help our buses get back, because it's like basically they're going northbound, and if we have that lane in the most congested part of the route, it helps those buses move faster, and overall will help their performance on other parts of the route outside the bus lane. So that's something that we are taking into account when we are looking at these two options. It isn't just like what the impact is here in Silver Spring, although that is important and definitely something we want to heed your feedback and considerations, but I just wanted to mention that as well.
But I think you also have to be cognizant of the impact on the businesses along those corridors, and the impact along the people who use those corridors and who use that parking. Because somebody said that there's plenty of parking in the garages. If I'm coming to work in the morning and I want to stop somewhere and get a cup of coffee, I'm not going to go and park in a garage and then go get a cup of coffee somewhere if it's not near my office, and then I'm going to go back to my office. And that's what people use that short-term parking for, day and night, on the opposite side of the street. So it's not just an impact, whatever the impact would be on your bus drivers, it's got to be considered the impact on the other people who are using that corridor.
Absolutely. Judith, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to mention to Jane that when I send the invite for the November 1st meeting, I will also send you the website, which will also have the concept boards, and I will mention that in the email. Yeah. Thank you.
And we're coming close, but I did have one other question that somebody asked, and this is probably a question for Gary since he's on here. Who made the decision? It sounds like, after hearing this, it sounds like Montgomery County made the decision that this would be done in Silver Spring, because the question that I got was, why do all the demonstration projects come to Silver Spring? We got the demonstration projects for the bikes, which was a mess. We got the demonstration projects. We got more bike lanes here now than everybody else. And now we got a demonstration projects for the buses. So our member wants to know, why is everything coming to Silver Spring for all these demonstration projects? Why not Bethesda? And so I assume that's a question for Gary, because it sounds like Montgomery County DOT made the decision that it would be Silver Spring. Is that correct?
It was a combined decision. Metro did a scan of where their bus routes are and where the heaviest ridership is and speeds. And it was determined that if you look at the bus routes we're talking about, the Ys and the Qs, they're like the second or third highest ridership routes in all of Maryland. So if you really wanted to have an impact on ridership and reliability, then that would be a really good segment. I will also tell you, in Bethesda, Metro has some routes, but the J routes, particularly between Silver Spring and Bethesda, but that's about it. There is not a lot of other Metro routes right now. And so I guess that would be a reason that maybe Bethesda would not be a very good example.
Nothing on 355 Wisconsin Avenue?
Yeah, but that Metro doesn't have, Metro has routes. Sure, you're talking about between Wisconsin and Medical Center.
I guess
Um,
I'm just, I mean, people just say Bethesda, so I'm just talking about like the whole range of, because I know that the county's looking at putting a bus rapid transit somewhere along 355, if I'm correct.
That's right. It goes down to Bethesda. So you're correct. And we are in design of that, and it's in design. We don't have any B other than the flash, which is certainly significant, but the flash really wouldn't be able to take advantage of this service in this corridor because it goes up and down Coolsville. So
Well, it's already there.
it's already there.
I mean,
Exactly.
but that's not Bethesda. So
You're right. Right.
that was what the question from our member was, why is everything coming to Silver Spring? Why can't Bethesda be some of these demonstration projects and experiments? So that was the question.
It's a good point, and we'll have to keep that in mind when we look at other pilots and demonstrations.
Okay, I will pass that along. Thank you.
Yes.
One final comment to pass on from the chat again is one about, again, I think the solution could be in the nature of signage, but considering adding directions for drivers if they are involved in a minor accident, where to pull over, because it normally would be the side of the road, but that's going to be out of place. So some signage solution there might be useful.
I think so. That's that would be helpful. Although I will tell you, and you can see right now, and you go on any stretch of road, there are a lot of signs right now. So we have to be careful not to pollute with too many signs, and you distract your message, dilute your message. So, but yes, that is certainly a good point.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate your time this morning. I know we're coming up on 10 o'clock. So Jane, I don't know if we have any other announcements for anyone before we break, but I think this was a helpful presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming to us and asking for it. Heads up, for giving us a heads up before the general public presentation. We appreciate that. And I think that I'm on the Urban District Advisory Committee, and I think Juanita's on here. She's on the chair of the committee right now. So if we've got time on our agenda, I think this would be a good conversation for us to have at that meeting as well.
That's great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.